Yeah, I think we just might have announced, we might have like mentioned it once or twice, saying, "Oh, this thing is happening," but we've never really gotten into it. And honestly, Kevin, you know better than anyone else. Like on the U.S. side, we just never really took off with it at all. When the Europeans are really doing a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and it's nice because it's not actually that difficult to organize, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You just put up the landing page and it goes by itself, but there's good and then there's perfection. So
I mean, that in itself is kind of interesting. Like, why didn't it take with or resonate with American editors? Did you need like a strong chapter type of structure to get it to go or not? I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think about that.
yeah, honestly, I feel like it's just someone has to say I'm going to do it and then does it. It's kind of what
Right.
happened with I think Lila is the one that reached out to me and was like, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Sure." And then
Wait,
Nikki
Lila,
came.
who?
The one in this chat right now.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I
okay.
think
I thought you meant Lila
generally,
Tretikov. Sorry.
right, you have to pay $1 generally for this mistake. So my real name is Leila, and then, but I go with Lily. But if people confuse it with Lila, Kevin, this is an expensive mistake. So
Right.
no, but it was great, Kevin. I mean, we were looking for people last year. It was great that you stepped up. US is not necessarily an easy country to organize because it is just very vast and every part is very different, and it is not a trivial case. So it was great to see you and Nikki stepping up and making it happen.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know. Originally, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do this for Ohio. So we had that whole world map with all the countries filled in, and then there was just the little Ohio in the United States colored in. And then I think Nikki saw it, and she's like, "Oh, let's do California too." So then we had Ohio and California filled in, and then at that point it was like, "Well, screw it, we'll just do the whole country."
And where does Stephen Laporte fit into that formula?
I think so. Two things. One is that Stephen worked last year on the back end of Montage, which is the jury tool that we're going to talk about at some point, probably today. And then he later joined the international team. But I think he basically pitched it to Nikki that you should organize it in California, and like that was one other place he came into the Wiki Lost Monuments discussion.
Ah, interesting. Okay, and do you mind if we take like the first 10 minutes, just since all of you were at Wikimania, it'd be great to do a little bit of chatting about Wikimania and what were some of your feelings about it or reflections. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Yeah, because we kind of threatened / promised to continue the conversation on Wikimania. I don't know if you saw, but the last episode was Molly White, Robert, myself, who's doing else we had? We had
the DJ.
The DJ. And did we have anyone else, or is that it?
No, just
the four of us?
Just Bill's girlfriend telling us that we had to leave.
Oh, that's right. We were doing it like right up to our Airbnb deadline, so we had to abruptly cut it off. We didn't even cover anything beyond Saturday, I don't think. So having some kind of follow-up discussion on kind of Wikimania takeaways is definitely a welcome thing. Great. So let's do that in the first 10 minutes. And, we can even let it go a little bit more because, we're not really bound by time too much here. All right. So normally what I'll do is I will do this is Wikipedia Weekly episode 125 intro, and then I'll edit in the music and everything else later. But we'll just kind of go around and you'll see the order in the document where I will say, I'm your host, Andrew Lee, also known as User Fuzzheado on the English Wikipedia and Wikidad. I'm going to add that this time. And then Robert will do a quick intro. Then Lodovic, you'll do yours. Then Lila, you do yours. Do you want Lily or Lila?
I think going with Lily would be best. Just
okay.
To stay consistent with the username. And yeah, I don't want to go so much public with my real name. So
right. Yeah, you can disclose or as much or as little as you want.
Yep.
And then Kevin, and then we'll get into the discussion at that point. Does that sound okay? All right. Let me start my timer so I have some time codes to write down here. And my stopwatch starts. Yeah, clear your voices and
if anyone who doesn't want their identity out there, just let me know in the Google Doc how you want to be identified when we put this on Twitter and Facebook and all that.
Good point. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. This is Wikipedia Weekly, episode 125 for September 6th, 2017. Wiki loves monuments and Wikimania 2017. Welcome to another episode of Wikipedia Weekly. I'm your host, Andrew Lee, also known as user of Hushedo on the English Wikipedia and Wikidata.
And I'm Rob Fernandez, user of Gamaliel, and I'm speaking to you from sunny Florida, where we're all about to be destroyed by Hurricane Irma.
I'm Lodewijk Geloof, user Effie Sanders from the Netherlands, where it's still bright and shiny in the morning.
I'm Lily, user Lily of the West from Persian Wikipedia.
And I'm Kevin Paravi, also known as Super Hamster from Ohio. I'm one of the Wiki Loves Monuments in the United States organizers, talking from Cleveland, Ohio.
Great. So welcome to episode 125 of Wikipedia Weekly, and we're really glad to have kind of the superstar team here for the folks who have something to do with Wiki Loves Monuments, which has been a project since 2010, and we're kind of reaching new heights with this project every year. So we wanted to bring along some of the folks who've been crucial to this project. And we're going to talk extensively about Wiki Loves Monuments. But if you listen to episode 124, we actually talked about Wikimania. And we thought maybe we could continue some of that conversation here today before we get into Wiki Loves Monuments, since Lily, Kevin, and Lodewijk were all at Wikimania in Montreal, and we kind of abruptly stopped our previous conversation with Robert, myself, Molly, and the DJ. What you may not have known is that we're in our Airbnb and we're hitting our limit on how long we could be in the house. But we're really glad that we could spend some time to talk to another crew of folks who were at Wikimania. So, Lily, tell us a little bit about what you thought about Wikimania. How many have you been to, and what were some of the things that you saw that were interesting?
Yeah, so this was my third Wikimania. I think the most interesting and exciting part, as always, is kind of to connect to people, right? Connect to the people that you know, connect to new people that you don't know. And these are both, newcomers to Wikimedia projects, but also, more experienced and long-term Wikimedians. So I think that's really the highlight of any Wikimania for me, kind of connecting to people. It was also exciting kind of to beyond the connection and that kind of social component and human component of it, just to get into one room and get things done. When you have people like in one place, things sometimes go much more efficiently. People are just more committed to get in one place and make progress on the projects, and it was nice to see that in Wikimania.
Yeah, I remember someone in the there's a Telegram messenger group said, they got more things done in one day than they could do in like 5 or 6 trips to different places around the world. So it was kind of nice to see that. Mm-hmm. Kevin and Lodewijk, what were some of your takeaways or things that stood out to you from Wikimania?
Yeah, so I'm Kevin. This was actually my first Wikimania. Before that, the only conference I've been to was Wiki Conference North America and a couple smaller conferences there. But it was a really good experience. Since this was my first time, it was my first real exposure to the international Wikimedia movement, which is really exciting. Got to meet people from all around the world when most of my interactions have been with people in the United States. Mm-hmm. It was great to connect with the Wiki Loves Monuments folks, obviously, got a lot of help there. And then also just meeting and seeing all the different projects people are doing around the world. Often online, you might not get that exposure easily. You're not fed the information about what projects people are working on, and being able to see that in person was really cool.
Yeah, Lodewijk, how about you?
Yeah, it starts to sound like a cliche. Meeting people and being able to chase them down the hole is one of the best things that Wikimania has to offer. Because of all these different countries that we're working with from Wiki Loves Monuments, it's always hard to get in touch with people, really. It's so easy on email to say, oh yeah, we'll talk about that next week, or we'll do that next time. When you have them face to face, you can actually talk about the issues that they're dealing with, the bottlenecks, and you can see how you can make their life a little bit easier by offering some ideas. I mean, they still have to do the work, but I think we were able to increase the number of participating countries quite a bit that year during those days, because we were able to talk with all those people.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was by far the biggest added value this year. I'm sorry for whoever designed the program, but for me, the whole way is really the most the coolest part.
Yeah, in years past, I think since London at least, you used to organize the discussion rooms, right? This is a kind of a ongoing series of roundtables, which is kind of a nice alternative to panels and having 4 people talk and everyone else listen. What did you think about this year's conference in terms of how it fostered discussion compared to years past?
Yeah, so I was in a way I was really happy that that basically the idea to bring discussions back it totally made it into the program. They organized a whole bunch of different roundtable discussions. They may not have been exactly how I would have organized them, but I think the direction is really important, that we bring them back as part of the main program, and that they're becoming part of what we consider Wikimania, because it's one of the most important venues to have discussions across our single communities, that the Dutch and the English and the French and the Hindi and the Wikibooks communities, and that everybody can learn from each other, and that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel every time again.
Right. Lily, Kevin, any other thoughts on Wikimania? What things stood out to you? What were some of the themes that you thought kind of came out in this one? I know, since Kevin, this is your first one, there's nothing to compare it to. But what were some of the things that kind of stuck out as trends within the movement or the community?
Yeah, I can just speak to the discussion component a little bit more. I think it was a great opportunity for us to kind of gather as a broader Wiki Loves community, with Wiki folks from Wiki Loves Folks, Wiki Loves Africa, Wiki Loves Women, Wiki Loves Monuments. We all get together and basically discuss some of the shared challenges and opportunities we have. We did a lot of exchange of knowledge and exchange of knowledge about the infrastructure and the way we do things, which was really valuable. And these happened through the more, the kind of the casual discussions that were set up relatively last minute, close to the conference. And I found those also to be very valuable for the work that we do.
Right. Yeah, I thought that one of the interesting things was just the presence of Wikidata. I don't know if we talked about that the last podcast much, Rob. Maybe
yeah,
we're just too
we
rushed.
did. Yeah, we had a lot of thoughts about Wikidata. But there's, it's a very important topic, so we could discuss it some more.
Yeah, I mean, sure, we'll talk a little bit about how Wikidata now plays into how Wiki Loves Monuments does what it does, right? It was, you folks started when Wikidata was not even around, so you've had to kind of change how Wiki Loves Monuments does what it does, right?
Yeah, I mean, we will talk about this a little bit later, probably in this podcast. But definitely, I mean, Wikidata has changed the way Wiki Loves Monuments operates, and it is just the beginning. So we feel that we are moving more and more in that direction, and it opens up a lot of opportunities for the work that we do for Wiki Loves Monuments.
Right. And next year, Wikimania will be in South Africa, which will probably be one of the more arduous destinations for a lot of folks to get to, but it's really exciting at the same time. So they already have their logo and website operating. So another 10 months and there we are, going to be in South Africa, hopefully. So yeah, let's jump into Wiki Loves Monuments, because, before we start the podcast, we're kind of musing about how this is mainly, driven by, European involvement, and only recently have Americans really been involved with it. But Lodevik, I believe you are one of the original gang that came up with this idea, and tell us a little bit about the origin and how you came up with Wiki Loves Monuments.
Yeah, sure. We started, as you mentioned, in 2010, back when Wikipedia was still a friendly place where everybody was happily discussing improvements. Basically, we started off, well, before Wiki Loves Monuments, there was already Wiki Loves Art. You know all about that, probably, in the New York, with the museums and everything, organized by the New York chapter. And then in the Netherlands, we organized Wiki Loves Art Netherlands. And then we basically made a merger between that and the windmill project. So we have about 1,100, 1,200 windmills in the Netherlands. And there was this group of crazy Wikipedians that was trying to describe every single one of them. And of course, you need a photo for every one of them, because otherwise, what's an article like? And then at some point they were finished, and they were looking for a new challenge. And then they decided, well, after chasing all these windmills, let's go into chasing all these national monuments. Then it turned out we have about 60,000 of them, which was a little bit more than what we bargained for. So we're still working on that.
Wait, 60,000 in just the Netherlands?
Just in the Netherlands, we have 60,000 monuments.
Wow.
Yeah, the countries definitely have a different perspective on what a monument is.
Yeah, for a second there, I thought you said 60,000 windmills, and I was stunned.
Well, maybe back in the days, but by now, no, not anymore. And then after that, already during 2010 competition, Jean-Fred from the French Wikipedians, he denies it by now, but I know it was him. Came to us and we're saying like, oh, this is so cool, I want to do this as well, can we jump in? And then we said, let's take it easy, this is a pilot, let's do it next year, we're going European. And then we had to do it. So that is when things turned crazy. 2011 European, and the year after that we went worldwide, but already in 2011 it turned into a world record. So yeah, it grew pretty steeply.
What was the world record in 2011?
I think so. That's the Guinness World Record for the largest photography competition. We had about 165,000 images back then, which was much more than what I think was a standing record of like 120,000. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Wow. So 2011, 165,000 images. That was very European or Eurocentric. And then what happened after that, 2012? How did it evolve then?
Yeah, so in 2012, we had some more countries, and then we had about 350,000 photos. And then countries like the US joined in as well. Let me grab... we had this whole bunch of countries that suddenly joined in. That was wonderful. We had countries like India and China joining in, who later on disengaged sometimes. But that definitely joined in for that time. It was an amazing ride. I think we had some 33 countries participating that year.
Wow.
It's wonderful to see that diversity that suddenly appears, and not only European countries anymore.
Right. And the key to Wiki Loves Monuments is that you work off of lists, right? It's not kind of willy-nilly. You actually go with lists that are compiled by either the government or other organizations that say that these are historical, and that kind of solves some of your notability problems. Is that right?
Yeah, so we started off with this list of national monuments. We first had to get the list, which was not trivial at the time, because there was no Wikidata, like you mentioned. So we had to put all the lists on Wikipedia, but then we first had to get the database from the government, and open government was not a big thing back then, to the best of my knowledge.
Right. So
it was hard to get that list in the first place. And then you start making photos and you start attaching more information to it. And yes, but that is why we started off with official lists, because that helps us with giving people a very clear purpose, like this is what we want to photograph and this is what is not part of the competition. As soon as you start to give people the doubt, like, oh, should I photograph this or not, you lose someone, and that's a big pity. So that's why we want to make it really easy, that choice for people, like, oh yeah, I can photograph this. It's the correct address. Oh yeah, let's take it. And if it's not the correct address, well, maybe next time. Right.
And at this point, 2010. I mean, it's kind of funny. We think of, well, at least I think of Wiki Loves Monuments as a pretty recent thing, but 2010's a while back, and a lot of technology's changed since then. Were most of the photos back in 2010 being taken by like point and shoot or digital SLR cameras? Like people weren't using their mobile phones cameras as much as today. Is that right?
Well, a little secret is that I think the 2011 international winner was, I think, taken by a mobile phone.
Oh, cool.
So I think they were already getting around in 2011 at least. In 2010, I haven't seen so many, but people were really suspicious about them. Like, oh yeah, we should really not trust them. But I think this is changing a lot as we enter the world stage, as we get more non-European countries involved, including the definition of what is heritage and what is a monument site. Because this is, well, as we've been doing it in the Netherlands, is a very European concept.
Right. And what is the, so there's two questions, I guess, is in terms of what's the interface look like for participants. One is just getting a random person who's not experienced in Wikipedia or Commons to upload to Commons had to be quite a big barrier, right? In terms of educating them about not just copyright of their own, but like public art versus, you know, things like that, freedom of panorama. And then the other thing, I guess, is you folks actually developed a different type of interface. It's not just going to a wiki page. You actually create a whole nother website for participating. Is that right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what we did, or at least the way the things work right now, is that we basically encourage people to go mainly to wikilovesmonuments.org, and there's the participate link, and people can go there, and there they can find the list of all participating countries. And then from there, they basically will be taken to the landing page of the country, and then they can find what monuments, identify what monuments are eligible, take a photo, submit them into Commons, and then basically participate as part of a Wiki Loves Monuments contest. That's kind of one entry path. The other entry path would be that you are already on a Wikimedia project, and there's a Wikimedia basically central notice banner shown to you saying that Wiki Loves Monuments is happening in the country that you're in. And then once you click on the banner, again, you're taken to the landing page of the country, and you will be able to participate. One of the newer ways that we are experimenting with this year, and is fully functional in at least 4 countries, is as the transition of data from our monuments database to Wikidata is happening, we are able to basically build more tools and services that can help people identify and explore both the state of the monuments and also find what to contribute to. So Pavel worked with Stephen on a tool called Monumental that is right now being served as part of maps.wikilovesmonuments.org. And if you are a participant in Ireland, Sweden, Kingdom, and Poland, you can basically use the tool to explore what monuments are available and submit photos for those. The nice thing about the new interface is that, first of all, it is much more user-friendly in some sense, right? As a user, you go there, the visuals are just much more the visuals that you're used to see as a user, as a regular user of the internet today. What you also see is that you will see the metadata associated with every monument and the missing metadata associated with every monument. So we are basically surfacing not only the fact that this monument needs photo, but also the fact that this monument requires, in order to document this monument, we're required to have more metadata associated with it. Obviously, Monumental and the state of maps.wikilovesmonuments.org is as good as our data on Wikidata. So the more we go and improve the state of our data on Wikidata, more countries can surface their monuments through this tool.
Since we've been talking about entry paths and how people get to the contest, what sense does everyone have about who's participating? Like how many people, how much of a fraction of it is established editors and photographers, and how on Wikimedia projects, and how many people are joining these projects because of the contest?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. I think it's a little bit different for every country. I was looking at numbers before coming to the podcast, and I was seeing that, for example, in the numbers in Germany are very different than the numbers in Iran, right? So it seems like some countries that have been doing it repeatedly, they have a user base that comes over and over and contributes, while in some countries that the contest has not happened, very frequently or has happened, but because of the way the contest is organized, the continuity happens less. You see a lot of newcomers coming to the project. So far, this year, we've had around 1,800 participants. This is in the past 6 days. And you see that across all the more than 50 countries that are participating this year, 60% of these contributors are first-time contributors. So these numbers obviously change over time. There can be, and this is my hypothesis, that early on you will get more people that are used to basically contributing, and you will get that kind of towards the end of the contest, you get more and more people who are newer to the competition. We should observe these numbers, but these numbers are generally really amazing, right? The formula of Wiki loves monuments, the fact that you can lower the barrier to contribution and bring in a lot of people to Wikimedia to contribute to them, to make that first edit, is really incredible.
Yeah, no, speaking for the US, I can say last year for 2016's event, over 85% of our contributors were new editors, which is a very high number. And I can speak more about that later, but it's very interesting to see and how it kind of differs from country to country.
Yeah, those are huge. 60% up to 80-some%. I mean, that's way higher than what we're used to when we do editathons, which is like sub 2% yield for those.
Yeah,
things.
these numbers are very exciting because we keep having all these problems with barriers to entry on projects, and people are overwhelmed. They don't know how to get involved. They're confused by all the policies and rules, and so it is absolutely exciting to hear numbers like 60%, 85% of new people contributing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think lowering the barrier for contribution, again, is a key concept for Wiki Loves Monuments. Like, how can we make it as easy as possible for literally anyone with a camera or with a phone to get out there and take a photo, right? I mean, the fact that you have, part of the reason that we emphasize for so many countries to participate every year is that you want to empower everyone to get out of their house and basically look around and see what is available in their vicinity. Or, when they go on vacation, to think about, okay, I can take this shot of this monument and upload it and kind of contribute to Wikipedia, kind of empowering people in their day-to-day life and in their vicinity where they live. Is something which is really valuable and unique to some extent to Wiki Loves Monuments.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's a really good point that you just made. It's like people, a lot of times when I do a lot of work, as we all do, with trying to recruit new editors at editathons and kind of thing, and people often feel they have nothing to contribute. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to add. They don't know where to start. They don't feel like they have any contribution of value potentially, and the idea that they could photograph something in their neighborhood, in their state, in their home country, that they can contribute something. It's a way for them to contribute that most other people in the world can't make that contribution because they're in a different geographic place. And so that's something that people can do that nobody else, that other editors can't, other contributors can't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to mention that of a small minority of these contributors who are new, they stay on. But even those that upload just a few pictures and we don't see them again, it's still incredibly valuable for them because, number one, they get to learn a bit about the Wikimedia Commons and the Wikimedia movement. They learn a bit more about our projects and what we do. And like as Lily said, they get to kind of see the value of historical sites, and they start thinking about their local history and taking photos of it and preserving it, which is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, that's really cool. And one of the things that I want to make sure we covered was, the whole question of what is a monument. And I think that's something that you folks probably had to wrestle with a little bit. And how well does that translate across languages? So tell us a little bit about how expansive that definition of monument is, and does it map well across cultures and languages?
Yeah, so for us, really, monuments is a practical. Basically, having lists of monuments is a practical solution, right, to this problem that we have. That we want to create focus, and we want to be able to tell people an easy way to identify what is around them. Right? So what we do is that, in general, we focus on built cultural heritage. This means things that basically are not easily movable, and they're built. So they're usually buildings or sometimes statues and other forms of built cultural heritage. And we want these, as Ludovic mentioned earlier, to be basically officially or recognized by some official entity. This can be, UNESCO, or it can be a local government. Obviously, this creates its own challenges and opportunities. So far, we have collected around 1.4 million monuments across the world as part of the list that we have collected through all the countries that have participated so far. But it also creates its own challenges because on the one hand, some countries basically do not have lists, right? And we are requiring almost like having the list as a requirement for organizing and participating in Wiki Loves Monuments. So this year, for example, we had this challenge in a country like Afghanistan that we really want to help to participate, but the lists are not there and we need to make them. And there needs to be a community to gather and create these lists, work with the local governments. And sometimes also in countries in sub-Saharan Africa, this can create problems, requiring lists that basically are created by governments in the past, and the history of the country right now. History of the country basically should not define what is a monument for the people who are living in those countries today. So this is definitely something which is a challenge for us, but a need as far as we understand. We are always trying to explore ways to expand lists and expand the definition, but built cultural heritage, not movable, is something that we have tried to stick with in the past.
Yeah, and I think something that I didn't really realize, because it's amazing how much kind of happens within your own culture of the Wiki Loves, but there's actually a whole competition within this, right? So it's not just do your best and everyone upload and you walk away. There's actually a very competitive environment there. So I'm just looking at the page that you have on the wikilovesmonuments.org site for the winners of 2016, and some of these numbers are astounding. So it says here on this page, they have 15 winning photographs of more than 10,000 photographers submitting over 275,000 photographs. I mean, that's amazing to think about that production. And it's just 1 month, is that right? Or 2 months, kind of?
Correct. It is 1 month for the most part. So it's throughout the month of September. And as you say, it's amazing to see the number of contributions and the number of uploaders who come and participate in the contest. And this whole machinery, which is basically for community that has come together to make it happen, right? I mean, you need all these countries, organizers to come together to make sure that they have a local jury that goes through all the photos that are submitted to every country. For some countries like Ukraine, this may mean going over 40,000 photos, right? I mean, this is like a significant amount of contribution to Wikimedia projects that now the community will need to go through, and the jury process sometimes can be really intense for the local organizers. But it's an amazing opportunity, an amazing process to observe and be part of, to see how this happens in every country. And every country will send basically up to their top 10 photos to the international team, and then the international team has its own jury and jury process. And all of these photos basically will go through that jury process for the top 15 to be announced as part of the international winners.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think that we see here 42 national competitions organize their own processes, and then they submit 392 nominees to an international competition. And then just thinking about that makes my head spin. Just think about all the judging that happens there and all the rounds here. But the result is stunning. So there's actually, here it says a jury report with all the top 58 images. And if you look at the winners, the winner last year was Entrance Hall to a district court in Berlin, Germany. And if you look at the next one, Royal Albert Hall in the UK. And you might have been able to look at, these commons contests in the past and say, oh, those are nice, but they're not pro quality. But these are all pro quality now. It's pretty amazing.
Right. I think both the quality is amazing, but also thinking about like the people who are behind it. And last year we tried to capture the stories of some of these people who are behind these photos. It was amazing to see that, for example, for the first photo, basically you have a lawyer who goes to the district court of Berlin a couple of times a week, right? And then he decides that, I'm going to go inside this building and take a shot of the building. He needs to go through basically getting the approval for doing that, because basically you cannot take a shot and really license it and put it. He, spends basically hours figuring out, the lighting in the room and all that. And it's amazing to see that, this is basically someone's workplace, and they open to their workplace, to the world, by taking this photo. And it's just beautiful to read these stories and see that how people are empowered to participate. It's for me, like, going through the stories is as amazing as seeing the photos that are submitted.
Right. And some of these photos, so it's not just Europe. You think number 5 was in Thailand?
Exactly.
Wat Arun Temple in Thailand.
Yep.
Yeah. And it looks like, a lot. It's so amazing to see some of these pictures. Like they change with the technology at the time, right? So a lot of these are now HDR photos, being, kind of a interesting, colorful glow that you really didn't have back in 2010. What are some of the other trends that you've seen in how either the nature of the photography or what kind of photos are taken today versus when it was started in 2010?
Yeah, I think that the nature, like the very basic concept on an international level, is pretty similar. As in that we still like beautiful pictures, we still like beautiful monuments. What you see is that there's typically always a mix, and you see that also in this set. Like, you have some of these monuments that are the magnificent monuments, right? The Taj Mahal, or the Louvre kind of buildings. The Palace of Versailles was there once. But you also see these monuments that are much less known. So when you scrolled by a little bit earlier, you saw this little wooden shack from the U.S., which is, it's a beautiful place. I wouldn't know where it is. Yeah, well, I know it now, but I think very little people in the U.S. would recognize it. And I think that is the beauty, because there's so much diversity in our cultural heritage. And the way that people photograph it. You mentioned DLR. Well, that's definitely different in many different countries. If you look at Eastern European submissions, you see that typically there's a very different approach to beauty as well. Like what is considered to be a good photo. It's very great to just go through those submissions and see how that changes as well.
I think also another aspect of the change in technology that we have seen in the past couple of years is the introduction of drones, right? So we don't see so many photos submitted by drones, but we definitely saw some last year and some the year before that. And they provide, in the areas that you can operate drones without any issues, they provide a beautiful, sometimes very encyclopedic view of the area, right? I mean, you can take as many photos of a city as you want, but the basically top view of a city gives you a totally different perspective about how the city is laid out and how the urban development has done. And that has been something amazing to see as well.
That's a great point. You see that also in the Commons Pictures of the Year, that you're getting some angles with drones that you've never seen before, just because we have that technology now. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and sometimes it's almost even vital to get an accurate depiction of the place. For example, in the United States, we have many Native American mounds. And last year, I submitted some photos, and some others might have as well, where we took photos of these mounds from the air. And these mounds from the ground, they look, it's hard to get a sense of scale. It's hard to see a design. But when you get that picture from the air, you really do get a sense of scale. And if you have one that's a particular design, you can actually see that. So I think it's definitely a piece of technology that's very beneficial, and I hope to see more of it in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you see, even in 2015, the winning picture was made with a drone. It was the Westerhaversund lighthouse in Germany. Two German winners after each other. But it's a beautiful lighthouse in the middle of like a very flat countryside. And the only way you're going to get like a very straight photo from that is if you're able to get it into the air somehow. So I think the picture right after that is from an Italian mountain, and then you can at least stand on another mountain and take a shot that way. But if you want to make a photo in flatland Germany of a high building, then drone is the way to go.
Right. I think this lighthouse photo that was number 1, that was a drone photo, right? That one.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Yeah, I remember seeing these. These are pretty amazing, the ones from 2015. And tell us a little bit about Zolota. You and I talked a few years ago, I think, just casually, because I think you were expressing some worry, saying one of the weird things about Wiki Loves Monuments is as it gets more and more successful, it kind of puts a big dent into what you can do the next year, because you're kind of photographing easy to get to things. And now for someone to be a prolific contributor the next year, they've got to find harder and harder to access monuments or new ways of capturing something. Tell us a little bit about that dynamic as this contest has gotten more and more popular and is going on to, 8, 9, 10 years. Do you still have that fear, or has there been a way to keep this contest going and keep it interesting?
Yeah, so I think there are always two sides to why you keep a contest going. One of them is cost, and one of them is benefit. On the cost side, we're trying to make everything as easy as possible. But you're asking about the benefit side, like how, what are the added values of all these beautiful images? And I think that there are definitely countries that are struggling with that, right? So you have countries like Austria where they have a very big coverage, and they get the feeling like, yeah, maybe at some point we have one picture of every building, we're done. Well, we in the international team definitely don't have the feeling that they're done. As soon as you have one picture of a monument, that doesn't mean you have to actually document the monument. There are so many different angles that are possible. You can always go for a higher quality. You can get rid of the scaffolding. In the Netherlands, for example, we have lots of black and white pictures that were donated by the National Monument Board. Try to find replacement for those, and try to find more colorful images. Things that are more modern, where there are no cars in the way. There are so many ways that you can keep improving on your photo base. But you could even look into different technologies, into different photography methods, like 360 photos from interiors, if copyright permits, which is always a big hurdle for us, of course. You can look into all different kind of ways, and keep improving on how we have documented a building, how we have documented our heritage.
Right.
Yeah, and
it's add some. Oh, sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay, thank you. I was going to also add to this that another angle to look at, like, basically the work left, and whether we have made really enough of a dent to start thinking about whether we are done as a community who gathers to document world's heritage. And that angle is looking at basically the number of monuments we have gathered so far, right? Again, like, we have had over the past years close to 80 countries in total participating, right? In terms of unique countries participating. We're still missing over 100 countries to participate in Wiki Loves Monuments. This means that we basically don't have the official lists of the monuments from these countries. So just collecting those lists and having these communities, bringing them on board and having them involved is something that is a goal, definitely, at least for the international team. And for us as a community, there's another aspect, which is, although in some countries you can argue that potentially the lists are expanded as much as they could, in many countries that are participating today, the lists are not the done lists, right? I mean, you can go deeper and deeper in the deeper layers of what is a built cultural heritage, and add monuments and cover more of the monuments of the country. The other thing I want to say is that kind of Wiki Loves Monuments, or some organizers, is some sort of a community event that creates some notion of family. And we'd like to go back to this example, like in Ukraine, the organizers were describing to us in Wikimedia conference in Berlin that, for them, this is like a ritual. Like they create family by organizing Wiki Loves Monuments. They make sure that, the winners of this year are the jurors of the next year. And they always look for ways of bringing back these people to their community. And for them, there's a value about creating that community, which is beyond just these photos. These photos are a means to an end for creating that community and maintaining it. And that's something also that we need to keep in mind, that photos and documenting cultural heritage is important, but it's also important to focus on the community and what we are building by organizing Wiki Loves Monuments.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating to think about how many of these countries participate, and we're looking at just kind of a grid here from 2016 on who's participated historically. And it looks like even places that don't really have a strong chapter, I mean, certainly if you have a strong chapter in those countries, that helps to be kind of the backbone. But even a lot of these places that don't have strong chapters are participating. And it's a hats off to the Wiki Loves Monuments project that, you can have this flurry of activity for a month or two and then have a 10-month break, and you can get that same energy back in a major way the next year is pretty amazing. Which comes to Kevin, and you've been kind of one of the pioneers in the U.S. in getting this participation from the U.S., because it's kind of embarrassing on the bottom part of this graph here that there was participation 2012 and 2013, and then 2 years of no participation. And you helped organize last year's. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that.
Yeah, so originally the international team brought it up that the US should participate. They said it wasn't too difficult. You set up a landing page, you get the campaigns going, and kind of just runs. So originally, I actually was going to run Wiki Loves Monuments in Ohio, just the state, which is kind of funny because you have the map with all the countries colored in, and you've got a little blob for Ohio there. And then later on, my friend named Nikki, who lives in San Francisco, she also came on board and wanted to do Wiki Loves Monuments in California. So then we had 2 states. And it was at that point where we said, hey, let's just run it for the entire nation, because why not? Which is interesting, because I think this might be one of the few times where the contest is being organized not so much by a central chapter, but just by individuals for countries that do have chapters. And it's been exciting. And tying back to the question about how to kind of motivate participation when a lot of monuments have already been photographed, something Nikki and I did in 2016, which is kind of unique, I think, was greatly broaden what it means to be a monument for the contest. So traditionally, in 2012 and 2013, people could only submit photos of National Register of Historic Places in the United States. These are federally recognized sites. There's about 90,000 individual sites in the United States, which is great. But a lot of them have already been photographed. I can speak for Ohio that we have a user named Knighton who's actually gone out and photographed something like 99% of Ohio's NRHP sites. So if you're in Ohio, it's like, well, I'm done. What can you do? So what we did was we expanded it so you could submit a picture of a monument as long as it's recognized by pretty much any authoritative organization. So this includes state-level historical societies. For example, Ohio has a historical society, Minnesota has one, Kansas, the list goes on, as well as local ones. A lot of local towns will have within the library their own local historical society with their own lists. So this expands the list of sites you could photograph, tenfold perhaps. I mean, a lot of these sites do overlap with the NRHP sites, but there's a lot of local sites that don't get a lot of recognition. So this motivates a lot of participation on the local level, as well as it really just gets people motivated to kind of recognize their own local history, something that might not be of great interest to everybody, but it kind of opens that up and lets people share their localities, which is really exciting. We've seen a lot of participation, I think, because of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see, the inclusion of more than just the standard stuff. I mean, I guess one thing that we benefit from in the US is that so much is just public domain. It's easy just to copy it over, and we need to kind of go deeper into the pool of what we photograph. So what are some of the interesting stories that you had from folks who participated in 2016?
So I think the biggest shocker was how much participation we got. So for 2016, we were pretty much first in terms of the number of users who participated. We did not upload the most photos, but we had the most participation. It was over 1,700, which was virtually tied with India, who had just about the same amount. Interestingly, every other country other than the United States and India, they had less than 1,000 contributors last year. So it was by a large margin too. Which is interesting for both India and the United States as to why this is. India obviously has a huge population. United States has maybe a third of that, but it is a very interesting thing, and I'm not even sure why really. I mean, it could be technology. People have cell phones. People are able to easily upload. It could be because of the lists, expanding the lists. It could be different offline events we've hosted. There's a lot of reasons to consider, and I'm not really sure if there's one.
You did a fantastic job. That's the reason. Let's admit that.
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
anyone can answer. But do you think it was important to have a landing site that's not just a wiki page, that it's actually kind of a familiar WordPress-looking site?
well, actually, in the United States, we didn't have a external website. It was actually
interesting.
on the wiki. I will say we kind of mixed it up, and our page is very unique compared to others. I created it from scratch. We try to make it very streamlined, right? So we have, the big logo at the top, quick description, and an upload button. And if you want the meat and the details, you can scroll down, but I like to think, has a very simple, intuitive interface that lets people easily get into it. And it's mobile friendly, which I think might help promote people uploading from their cell phones the pictures they already have.
So it's a mobile friendly page on Commons. Is that right? Is it in Commons that you made that?
Yeah, when I say mobile friendly, I'm not saying it's necessarily responsive, but everything's pretty much in a single common. I know a lot of the pages are like 2 columns, for example, and it gets kind of smushy. Right. But it's simple and intuitive, and I think that kind of does help people get in. Because the driving factor to all these images, I think, is the central notice. So people will come on Wikipedia, see, oh, Wiki loves monuments, what's that? Click the link. And as soon as they click that link, you have to draw them in. You have to really get them interested right then and there. So having the intuitive page, having an intuitive upload page, I think really helps.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some really interesting lessons for Commons from how simple you made this page. And we're looking at on this site here, it's basically a very pared down page where you don't have sidebars and all kinds of stuff to distract you from it.
Yeah, that's actually the upload portal. So that's where people will select the type of monument they're uploading and the state they're uploading from. Just keeping it as simple as possible.
Yeah, and they're able to submit from their cell phone directly?
Yeah, they could. They can also use the mobile app, I know, but...
Neat.
Oh yeah, this is very intuitive, and there's links for each of the individual 50 states and other territories.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is much easier to navigate than your typical wiki page.
Yeah, and it's nice because we started tracking contributions by state, so we actually have categories for every single state. So you get to see like the photos coming from your state. Historical societies might be able to see what's coming from their state, and it almost creates a kind of friendly competition. Like, I'm from Ohio, I want to see a lot of pics in Ohio, so I'll go out and kind of try to promote the event within my community.
So in the United States, where what areas were you seeing the most contributions from?
It's pretty focused on population. So DC, we get a lot of. I can't tell you how many photos of the Washington Monument I've seen. I'm sick of it. Still great to upload them though. We want to get as many cool views as we can. But New York, California, they see a lot. Oftentimes we'll see like a couple individuals upload a lot. So for example, right now for 2017, I think the top contributor has uploaded 40 photos so far, and the majority is from their home state. So that really does give a boost to the smaller states for participation. But yeah, it's mostly just based on population and where editors are.
Yeah, it would be great to see more rural participants, because if there's a monument in the middle of South Dakota, who's going to drive out there?
Yeah,
to go photograph it.
Yeah, and that's where it gets exciting too, with including state and local level sites, because sites like those might not necessarily be recognized on a national level, but it has been recognized as important on a local level, and it's important to get photos of those.
Right. Now, here's so this is kind of interesting. Now, let's bring our conversation to Wikidata. So how does the rise in the last 2 years, I guess, of Wikidata not just being a place where interlanguage links reside, but people are starting to build it out? There's, you've got now a funded project on bringing structured data to Wikimedia Commons, and it seems like all the stars are aligning so that Wikidata is now, part of everything. It's not just a side project; it is now being brought to the center of a lot of stuff. So, how is Wikidata and Wiki Loves Monuments, interacting, or what's the effect of Wikidata on the project?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that, but I think the opportunities that the Wiki data brings for Wiki Loves Monuments is really just beyond what we're talking today. And we need to think as a community very actively and proactively about how to use the data more and more as we go to Wikidata. But basically, many of our monuments are moving right now from say the lists on Wikipedia or on Commons and as part of the monuments database to Wikidata. And as that's happening, basically these monuments are becoming more, monuments and the metadata associated with them are becoming more and more accessible, in the sense that before this, if you wanted to see what percentage of the monuments in your country are photographed, or what percentage of the monuments in your country have at least N photos, you had to go through a lot of processes and steps, and you needed to know a lot before you be able to write such queries and basically get the answer to your questions. So one thing that Wikidata has done, and it is continuing to do for Wiki Loves Monuments, is basically making our data of monuments, the data that is being collected, more accessible. We are collecting the largest database of monuments in the world, and it's amazing to make that accessible to people via, let's say, Sparkle queries. Like if you are on the more tech engineering side of it, you can write a query and basically get any output that you want with the data that is there. If you're on the less technical side, what the transition to Wikidata has allowed us is for tools like maps.wiki-loves-monuments.org to be created, right? The interfaces that would allow you to explore, and these would all be extremely hard to do outside of Wikidata for us. We are also looking at opportunities for basically like researchers and academics getting into this data and using it and helping us expanding it, right? I mean, once the data becomes queryable, once the data becomes accessible to researchers, really the sky is the limit, and what can be done with it is something we're deeply looking forward to see.
And I just wanted to add, for those people who are not familiar with Wikidata, it really makes this data incredibly accessible, because people here talk about queries and data, and they think that, oh, I need to be a technical person, I need to be a coder to be able to deal with this. And Wikidata, like that we were talking about, like you were just talking about having a query where you could see which monuments in your country didn't have photographs. That's with Wikidata and the query tool, that's 2 lines of Sparkle that you could easily write that query in seconds, or just use an existing query, change a couple of variables, and have that list in seconds. And that's how Wikidata is making this data accessible to everyone. It's very exciting.
Yeah, and we also play with it sometimes with the maps.wiki-loves-monuments.org. It's amazing to see that, you don't see a monument on the map, and you know that a monument should exist there. You go to Wikidata and you update the geo coordinates, you add the longitude and latitude of the monument, and you come back to maps.wiki-loves-monuments.org, and then the monuments is there, right? I mean, basically by adding the coordinates of a monument, you have now enabled people to very easily find that monument on a map, contribute towards the metadata associated with it, or contribute by uploading a photo for it. It is really incredible to see how it can ease the process of both discovery and contribution on our end.
Yeah, and I think especially for the monuments, it's clear that this need has always been there. Already in 2011, Martin Dammers, as Multichill, has created the monuments database, right? And that is basically Wikidata before Wikidata even started. He scraped all these lists from the different wikis and pushed them into a single format, trying to make this data accessible. But the editing of that data was much harder, because you had to go to the list on Wikipedia, go to the edit interface, so you could not do this visually as visual editor, but you had to go to the real editor. And then you had to find the right parameters, change them, add the longitude, and well, man, it's definitely possible, but it's really for the more hardcore editors. And I hope that with Wikidata, what becomes possible is that you can start building much more tools on top of that, and that you can make it much easier to edit, and much more fun, of course. And especially for countries that are outside the European or the Western influence of having wonderful monument databases already from the government provided. I hope that this makes it much easier for countries in Africa, for countries in Asia, to start enriching the data that is available, because very frequently, the only thing that we know, for example, the list in Uganda that we just put online on the wiki there, the only thing we know is the name of the monument and the district they're in. Sometimes we don't even know the city, and then it becomes really hard to photograph if you're not someone from around there. And that makes it much easier. Once you get that data editable, then people can start enriching that information and make it actually findable.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, right now, if you don't have Wikidata, you don't have structured data on commons, you pretty much have to just know English, right? Because all the category names are English, and that is, not a great lowest common denominator to have folks have to require English as a starting point. I'm just looking at the stats right now, and we're already we're not very far into September. We have 42,000 plus images in these categories, which is pretty astounding. So 42,000 in just under 2 weeks, which is amazing. And then if you
actually 6 days, so
6 days, 1 week.
So it's,
and 1,800 uploaders.
Yep.
Wow, that's great. So this is something that you mentioned, Lodevik, which is interesting. If you look at the chart of participation, no China, no Japan, no Korea. Right, so none of the three biggies from East Asia are involved. There might be many other reasons for that, but certainly if you require someone to really be, very English proficient to have to be involved with this, to navigate categories and commons and everything, that could be quite a barrier.
That's funny that you mentioned it. China is actually in your screen right now. But
is China there?
China is there.
Is this the first year they're participating? Because the grid before had no China in 2016.
Yes, they were there once, I think in 2013. But of course, China is much harder to organize a competition like Wiki Loves Monuments, because you don't have the usual access to the banner. Right. Normally, what countries thrive on is the fact that they can use the banner on top of Wikipedia to get the attention of people. And if you have the big firewall and people are using VPNs to access Wikipedia, that becomes much harder.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so we were able to create a workaround for that this year, but it remains a hard thing. But I'm really thrilled with the fact that China has already so many submissions this year. But we are trying to get more and more countries participating. What I'm especially thrilled about is the number of participating countries in the Arab-speaking region. So that is including countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Palestine. That's really amazing. That's that part of Asia. And then, of course, you have India, that has been a long-time participant, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan. Those are usually very big countries in the number of submissions and the number of participants. And for the first time, we were able to get Australia on board, which is also a big change.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. They haven't been on board before, huh?
Yeah, that's mostly because the word... So what I understood from the history of that discussion is that the word monument has a really different meaning there. And of course, it's much harder in Australia because of the huge geographic distances that we're talking about compared to the number of people living there.
Have you folks seen that Ukraine is by far the biggest? 4,700 photos from Ukraine.
They are going pretty strongly, yeah. But Armenia, I think, is first. Let me look up the numbers.
Armenia is first?
For now, yes.
Armenia, Armenia is 10,000. Holy cow! They're like
so it's Armenia, Germany, and then Ukraine.
I'm sending you a link with the statistics. Maybe that makes it a little bit more visible.
Oh yeah, that'll help. Wow, but that's pretty amazing. So this is the stats here: Armenia, Germany, Ukraine, Russia, Italy, France. Wow. But that's 10,000 from only 33 uploaders. That's actually not a lot of uploaders.
Yeah, and they seem to be, if you look at the last column, it's basically 7 of them are newcomers. So it seems most of them are Wikimedians who know of the workings of Wiki Loves Monuments, at least to some extent. And it's great to see that they're contributing so heavily. I actually traveled to Armenia 2 months ago, and I'm looking forward to upload my photos of Armenia very soon.
Neat. Yes, Armenia is the surprise, but impressive uploader. And then if you look at the I guess the communities where the highest percentage are new users, India is 82% and US is 81%.
Yes, and in Armenia, I think there should be really a big shout out to the guy who has uploaded like 9,000 images so far. Sogomon Matevosian. I'm really sorry I'm mispronouncing your name, but you're doing an amazing job.
I'm sorry, did you say 9,000?
Oh, yes.
Over 9,000 images, wow.
That's one person. He has, I suspect, we really have to capture this story, Lily, but I suspect that he has collected those images for the whole year and is submitting them like crazy right now.
Yeah, I have to say they probably stockpiled them.
But on its own, it's really amazing, right? I mean, it happens also in Germany. I think user Tillman 2007 last year uploaded more than 12,000 photos, and we reached out to them, and they said basically, yeah, I mean, they take photos and they categorize them, and you know, these are real uploads, real photos. They are categorized. Everything is very organized, and it's amazing to see that some people are that committed.
That's fascinating. Like, I'd love to talk to some of these people and find out, because, you know, 40, you know, I get the idea of going out and taking 40 or a couple hundred photographs, but I don't think I've taken 12,000 photographs in my entire life. And so I want to find out, like, what's your process? What's your motivation? You know, and find out, can we bottle this somehow?
These are beautiful. I mean, it looks like he went to monasteries and took a lot of pictures of gravestones and tombs, but they're so beautiful because Armenia is one of the oldest Christian communities, right? So we might have some of the best collection of Christian headstones in the world just in Commons because of this.
Yeah, that is one way to rack up the numbers. If you take pictures of individual headstones, like I'm on Find a Grave a lot, and there's a lot of motivated contributors there that will go out to a cemetery and take pictures fill other people's requests to take pictures of their relatives' headstones, or take pictures of everything in the cemetery.
Right.
And that's great, right? I mean, as we're thinking about how to document the monuments, I mean, one way to think about it is that you want to be able to empower basically a machine to make a 3D image of a monastery, right? And for that, having 3 photos is not enough, right? I mean, you need photos from every angle, or from many angles from different times of the year. And it's great that these people are going out there and taking all these photos. Sometimes when you look at them in sequence as like basically a bare viewer of these photos, it looks like, whoa, what is the purpose really of, you know, uploading so many photos? But when we think deep about like the database that we're collecting and all the images and metadata we're collecting to document these monuments, these are very valuable photos for the time that hopefully machines will run on these photos and create, you know, the 3D images of the world monuments.
Yeah, I mean, 360, 3D, these are all new horizons for people to go back to these places where they only have flat pictures and recapture these with the new technology. So I guess that's a good segue into what do you see as the next steps for Wiki Loves Monuments? What are things that you see happening with the project going forward?
So maybe this is a good moment to mention that Nikki just joined. I think she just came back from a walking tour of Wiki Loves Monuments in San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Oh, so tell us, Nikki,
okay.
You are based in San Francisco. You just finished a photo walk for Wiki Loves Monuments. Is that right?
That's correct.
So tell us, what do you do on a photo walk, and what did you take pictures of today?
So I personally didn't actually take any photos. I was taking video of the tour because the person giving the tour is a very entertaining person. So I'll be putting some of those on Commons. But what we were taking photos of. So we went from, so I work at the San Francisco Art Institute, and our main campus is an NRHP site, and there aren't many photos of it on Commons, and it's a very beautiful building. And we just opened a new campus at Fort Mason, which is another NRHP site. The entire campus is. So we did a photo walk between those two places, and we passed through the Maritime Museum and a few other places that were all just like historic districts. So it raised a lot of interesting questions, which I'm very curious what others here think about the idea of documenting a historic district. Because in the US, a lot of the NRHP sites are, or not a lot of them, but there's a fair amount of ones that are just like whole, you know, huge areas where, you know, technically, and this is something for, you know, the organizers and judges to, you know, potentially discuss, which I find really interesting, is, you know, every single building on, you know, something that's designated as a historic district, is it eligible as a monument? I would say yes, because it's part of that space. So we had a lot of really interesting conversations about that while we took pictures of, there's these two rowing clubs that are some of the oldest athletic clubs in the country that are part of the Aquatic Park Historic, they're part of the Aquatic Park Historic District, which is an NRHP site. So the person giving the tour was actually a member of one of those clubs, so we were able to go inside. We didn't get a chance to go into the conversation about, you know, taking photographs inside private spaces, but I'll follow up with the group afterwards about that. But so a lot of interesting conversations about that. So it was mostly along the waterfront, just going between the, from the Aquatic Park Historic District up to the actual Fort Mason campus. And that area itself has a really interesting history in connection to just the history of national parks and like repurposing buildings, but still preserving some part of their history. Because Fort Mason was, you know, a military fort. And then in the 70s, there was a lot of movements nationwide to sort of repurpose military forts into something that's, you know, both preserving the history, but also like sort of put back into more public use. So in many cases like this one, they, you know, go over to the National Park Service and become national parks, and some of the structures are also NRHP sites. So just a lot of really interesting conversations about that, and a lot of photos of the inside of these places. And we also passed a number of statues, which we now have to go and look up and see if they actually do count as monuments. So sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but it was really exciting. And just, I think, you know, from my perspective, this is the first photo walk that I've been a part of. And I think it was very fun that it was, you know, we had some specific sites in mind that we wanted to cover, but there was also a lot of freedom to sort of look around and do other things, which may not involve taking pictures of monuments, but are enriching in the conversation, and I think are important to get people thinking of like what it really means to document a monument, and to what extent are people a part of what makes it a monument. I think in a huge way, but you know, at least on Wikipedia, there's, you know, the question of like, is it appropriate for people to be in a photograph of a monument if the subject of it is supposed to be it, and what does it mean to document a place, and things like that. So I know that I didn't completely answer the question, but I think, I think photo walks are really great for building community and for getting like newcomers involved, and sort of,
Yes, this is no. This is really cool, Nikki. We're super excited that you could make it at least towards the end of this. It's great to hear your experience firsthand after your first photo walk. Going back to Andrew's question about what is kind of next or what is new, this is one of the things that we are experimenting with pretty heavily this year. The photo walks across countries and cities that are organizing Wikilove's monuments or are not. So we are having a partnership with Flickr this year, and as part of that partnership, Flickr has called basically this month, Wikilove has dedicated this month to Wikilove's monuments on their end, which means that the photographers are there on their end are also organizing photo walks across the many cities in the world. They're also connecting with Wikimedia communities in certain countries and joining the photo walks by Wikimedians, organized by Wikimedians. So this is kind of a theme that is, photo walks have been there for at least a few years, potentially for longer, but this year we see a lot of activity around them. Right now we have more than 80 cities signed up to organize photo walks, and we are thrilled to see what's going to come out of these photo walks, both in terms of kind of building communities, bringing the communities of Flickr photographers and Wikimedia photographers closer to each other, but also just bringing more amazing photos to Wiki Loves Monuments.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And I do just, on a very practical level and in a very like real life way, do want to mention something specifically for the sake of other people organizing photo walks. Is that if you're planning on having, so what happened today, we had the walk, and then the plan was at the Fort Mason campus where we ended up, I was going to give a short demonstration on how to upload to Commons and like submit to the Wiki Loves Monuments US competition, which is, I think, very easy and self-explanatory through the landing page and everything. But I think it's always important when, you know, people are together, like physically in a space, to like take that as an opportunity for like a, you know, teaching moment to actually like make sure that people will, you know, go and put these photos on Commons, especially like newcomers who are there and like taking photos and really interested in it. But like, how do you guarantee that they actually will, or not guarantee, but, you know, really, oh, sorry, my battery was going, so I paused for a second. Make sure that they actually like contribute them to Commons. So we were planning on doing the tutorial after, and I went inside early to just like turn on the monitor. And in that time, the sun was setting, and everyone was really interested in going to follow the sunset, so they wandered away and didn't come back. So we didn't actually get to do the tutorial, unfortunately. But I'll be able to follow up with the people. But so in then talking about that afterwards, I think if you're planning on doing that, you should have some type of, do whatever kind of tutorial or demonstration at the beginning to guarantee that people, and then it also sort of shapes it more. It's all framed 100%, or not 100%, but through the lens of, yeah, I mean, I tried to talk about it like through the walk, like Wikipedia and everything. But it would have been better to do it beforehand, because then we also would have had that demonstration. People would have been, yeah. Anyway, so that was one slight downside to it, was that we didn't get to do that. But I just wanted to mention that because I think it's just very practical, and just for the sake of like spreading the learning from this one slightly negative part of the experience. So yeah, do any kind of demo or tutorial in the beginning. That's my special message to other photo walk organizers. But in any case, I mean, there was still like just sparking the imagination by like walking around and like getting to see your city differently. Like I went through parts that I'd never been before. And I think, yeah, the imagination and like just walking and like, I'm really excited about the fact that Flickr is doing that, because that's a lot of really good photographers and like a lot of really interesting experiences that people are going to have that are all, I think, going to be kind of, I think it was sort of magical. So I'm excited for that for people. And it's really exciting to mix that magic with the magic of Wikipedia, which I think is best done by having a demo in the beginning. Yeah.
Cool. And this is your first time working with the project? Did you participate in years past, or this is the first time?
I organized the Wiki Loves Monuments US with Kevin last year.
Oh, great.
But photo walks.
Great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to stop in and tell us how it went, because, you know, in the US, we have a unique structure, let's put it that way, that we don't have a strong chapter system, and these meetups are really important.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if this is something that I'm sorry. I just wanted to make the point really quick that maybe this is something that we could recreate at the conference level, maybe do something like that at a Wikimania or at a regional conference, because we're in the US, we're starting to have culture crawls during our regional conferences. Mm-hmm. And so maybe we could do that when we go to the museums, like encourage people to take pictures of a historic district on the way. And so this is a lot of potential.
Yeah. I think something like that would be a really great idea. Because there's something about, I mean, like conferences are great for like this sort of feeling of togetherness, but so much of the time, like you're just in one place, and just this mixture sort of, it really, I don't know, it really, I think especially like glam institutions and groups and things like that. I mean, because it's photo related, and also just like the connection between city and culture and Wikipedia in that sense, and like just sort of the more local dimension, especially in the US, where, as you were saying, it's kind of separated. Or yeah, a strange organization.
Yeah, we're gonna try to do that in South Africa, is try to formalize some kind of, the pre-conference is not just hackathon or sitting in a classroom, but getting out and around the city. I mean, Kevin did a pretty good job this year in getting people out into town in our Wiki Conference North America beforehand, and I think we've taken that culture crawl idea and made it part of our Wiki Conference North America, but now maybe we try to bring that to Wikimania. And I think even in Wikimania, they've always done it very casually, as they've done a Wiki Loves Monuments meetup, but I remember them being quite small and not the largest meetups. But maybe, Lodewijk, you can tell us a little bit about that.
I think in Israel we had a pretty good set of tours right after Wikimania. I think that would be a great concept to copy. I'm not sure if you went on one of those, but I went to I think to Acre, which is a little bit more to the north from Haifa. I think that is a wonderful opportunity to go with a group of Wikipedians, which is really a unique experience. I mean, Nikki, you think you've done something now? Just imagine if you have just Wikipedians in that group. How crazy that groups get. That's so weird. Like pointing the camera everywhere. And of course, they know everything better than the tour guide, so that's always amazing.
Yeah, we kind of did that. I think 2008, when we were in Alexandria, Egypt, and we kind of did that as the day after the conference, and we visited the Library of Alexandria, the research rooms, and talked to the scanners and the archivists and everything. And I think, if we look back on it, that's kind of the birth of a lot of what happened with GLAM, and how we were formally engaging libraries and museums. So yeah, we should definitely bake that in as a more formal part of Wikimania if we can.
I think connecting with I think specific, like that's, I would love to hear more. I mean, would be the fact that that's at the Library of Alexandria, that kind of is a point of origin for this, is pretty incredible. Has that been like written about or like discussed, that history?
It's folk knowledge now. It's been baked into Liam Wyatt's presentations, I think, when he was talking about a lot of the stuff that he was doing with GLAM. But we definitely should write up more about that.
Yeah, good old volunteer documentation.
Yeah, exactly. Great. So any other words about where you folks want to see Wiki Loves Monuments do next? We've got drones, 360, 3D scanning, more countries participating, Wikidata now integrated into things. What other things?
Yeah, I think the most immediate thing is right now is the month of September. Pretty much all countries who are participating, more than 50 of them are on across the Wikimedia projects. Wherever you are in the world where these countries are participating, please just identify a monument that is participating, take a photo or use one of your old photos and submit it to comments, put their free license on it, and just participate. Help us collect and document these our world heritage. In the kind of medium term, we are thrilled to work with the national organizers and then within the international team to go through all these photos that are going to be submitted throughout the month of September, and go through the jury processes and eventually see the top 10 from each country, and also the top 15 in the international level. And the results for the international level will come out in the first 2 weeks of December. So we're really looking forward to that. And then basically looking longer term, we are looking for ways to continue to ease the process for organizing Wiki Loves Monuments for local organizers. We have started last year. We started with building a jury tool that can help organizers and their jurors to basically have a easier and more accessible process for and tool for judging the photos. We're continuing to go down that path of identifying the bottlenecks, the areas that the organizers need help, and one of our number one goals or top goals is basically to make the process easier for organizers. We're this year working Also on this maps.wikilovesmonuments.org, the transition of the data to Wikidata, all of that is to make the participation easier, making the identifying of the monuments easier. We are also looking forward to basically look at the ways that we can streamline the pathway to entry. It's still quite complicated. If you are looking to participate for the first time, in many cases you can get lost in the landing pages and through the processes that we have. And the international team definitely takes this up on itself to basically help the national organizers improve the process. Again, maps.wikilovesmonuments.org has helped a little bit this year, definitely for the 4 countries where we have full support, and a little bit for the other countries. We are looking forward to the expansion of that process in the coming years and making things easier.
Great. Any last words, Lodvik, Kevin, Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what Lily was saying, I think making things easier is like wonderful. And I also just have to say that the jury tool was amazing and was really instrumental in feeling comfortable having judges who didn't have a lot of Wikipedia experience, because even like that, to the design of it was very user friendly and it was like pretty straightforward. And I think that was both unusual for Wikipedia stuff, and I think very positive, because it made it easier to, like, that it's a really good gateway. Like, the thing I really love about Wikilove's Monuments is it's a gateway from so many different angles to get other people involved in parts of Wikipedia in ways that like really connect to them personally, connected like very often to where they live, and to make more dimensions of it, like organizing and judging and things, easier is really important.
Yeah, last year, Nikki, actually, you were in charge of finding all the jury and the judges, which was really great, because I know you try to find people from all around the nation. You found people from different art institutes and historical societies and from Wikipedia and so on and so forth, which was really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's, every way that we can make that easier to expand more. Because especially, like, another thing I wanted to say is I think, like, something I would like to see more is, like, involvement of, like, artists and other people at art institutions in this, because I think it's a really, especially in talking about walks and photo walks and that kind of like social urban space dimension, because that's like in contemporary art and art education is a very more than just like a hot topic. Like it's an interesting direction that like the whole like field, I think, of the humanities could go in a really like positive way, and especially like the digital humanities and like GLAM and stuff. So it's, I don't know, there's a lot of magic there. And I just also have to say, like, because at some point, I forgot who said it, but at some point someone made a joke about the Wikipedians knowing more about the tour guides. And I just have to say that on our photo walk, the person who was leading it was our archivist, who's been at the institution for 36 years. And just the amount of knowledge that he has as an archivist at an art school, and like what an art school is in a city, and the people who go there and the stories that they have and how they connect to the different places, and like again, like a folk story, or like the sort of like folk, it'd be cool to get those stories too as like another dimension of Wiki Loves Monuments, and just the involvement of artists, I think, is something I'm interested in. So making more tools that make it, because I also think it's important for artists to deal with like the side of like volunteering to help run things and things like that, and having it can't like the other like volunteering side, and not just like the have fun and like take photos side. Well, actually I think it's important, but like it's important to make involvement in the other sides of the process accessible too, because I think that's the true way that like the community grows. So that's my last words.
Yeah, and I would really like to encourage people, wherever you live, just participate in Wiki Loves Monuments, even if it's just with one photo. It's really fun. If you're living in one of the 53 countries participating, just go to wikilovesmonuments.org if you haven't seen the banner yet, and upload a photo. If you're part from a language community, or if you live outside your own country, go to wikilovesmonuments.org, find your country, and upload the pictures. It's very much welcomed, but it's also really, really fun to discover new heritage around the corner sometimes, depending on the country, that you never knew existed. It's a wonderful way to explore your own heritage and to share what you're proud of in your country. Secondly, I would really like to encourage, like, if you are thrilled by this story, and you want to help organizing Wiki Loves Monuments, it's already possible to go to Wikimedia Commons Wiki Loves Monuments 2018 and register your country. Just mention that you want to be kept updated, and that's the best way to make sure that Wiki Loves Monuments gets organized in your country next year.
Great. Well, thanks so much, all of you, and we look forward to maybe doing another episode right after the contest ends and seeing how everything lined up this year with previous years. But if those Armenians are anything to measure things by, you're going to be at a record pace at this point. So, but thanks again. And for those folks who are listening, if you have any feedback, feel free to visit wikipediaweekly.org, which is where the podcast is hosted. You're also welcome to join our Facebook group, which is also called Wikipedia Weekly. Just find that group and request to join. It's a pretty active place for people to discuss anything and everything in the Wikimedia universe. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was
All right.
great fun talking.